What is the most common thing about war? The most common, but also most devastating things about war is that no one wins. World War II, the most devastating war of all time. This war caused deaths of millions. Many children and women died of hunger. Many who participate in war returned handicapped. Also, many couldn't make home and were found cold at that burning war ground. This is the story of a boy who is a victim of this unnecessary war. He is a miner whose mom died at bombing, house was destroyed, and only one thing that was holding dear to him is his little sister. So, what do you think? Could both brother and sister will survive the war, or effort of both would die in vain? How did they fight to survive, and whom they fight with? What tragedy did these siblings face in this unconditional surrender of Japan? Let's find out. The story starts with the scene where a poor boy with no food and no support is dying on the street. This boy is going to play a huge role in this movie. Actually, one thing, I have to say that this is the future. So, why don't we just skip this scene and find out who is he? And find out what role did he played in this story. In the present, we are shown that America is continuously bombing from sky by the use of fighter planes. Then we saw the main protagonist of the show, whose name was Seita. Seita and his family, as everyone else was evacuating their house to the shelters so that family can be safe from bombing. As Seita and his sister were late during the evacuation process and mom was gone earlier to the shelter, so both two were caught on bombing. Actually, I would say almost caught. It's not like they actually get caught by bomb and die on the process. They were almost executed at the process. The sky was raged by the fighter planes, and fire was everywhere. Everywhere the eye can see. There was chaos. People were panicking and running to save their lives. And there was a Seita and her sister, Setsuko, in the middle in the crowd, also running for their lives. House of them was all destroyed. Also, many people died during bombing. Many families were crying as their loved ones died during the process. Everywhere the eyes can get, there is a scream. Scream of mother who lost their child, and scream of soul of people who couldn't make it. Yes, her mom also died during bombing. It looked like mom couldn't make it to shelter on time. I can't imagine how much burden or how much pain they were holding in their heart. And we think we got problems. We modern people can't even imagine that kind of pain. The modern world. We have everything this era. We have resources. But people involved in the war don't. So we can't even imagine how much burden they have, as people were dying out of hunger. After surviving the bombing, as brother and sister were wandering here and there was an announcement that in the elementary school, there was first aid and medicine as hospital was far from the reach. Seita's sister's eyes were also hurting by that time, so he assumed that his mom can be at that school waiting for them. As soon as they got to the school, Seita made his sister to get the medication. They both were waiting on the line. Then soon Seita found out what kind of tragedy had struck other than his burned house. While Seita was waiting in the line, his aunt came in hurry to inform Seita about the death of his mother. Very sorry about the misinformation. Actually, at the time when aunt approaches, his mom was severely injured than dead. This tragedy broke his heart. As his sister was at checkup, Seita went to see his mother. Also, doctor was there to confront him. He gave Seita the ring of his mother. Doctor showed him his mom. His mom was severely injured. Every part of her body was covered in bandages. But this day ended up being last day he could see his mother. His mother was announced dead the next day. She was burnt with other corpse for her funeral. This one day became the worst day of those siblings' lives. Worst part of this is that Seita, big brother of Setsuko, never told her sister about death of their mother. Their mother was so brutally injured that I can't even show her at YouTube due to its policy. After visiting his mom, Seita went back to his sister where she was playing with aunt from before. After seeing Seita, her sister, Setsuko, in hope of seeing her mother, asked where is mama, but he lied to her about their mom's condition. He said, their mama is at Nissanamiya Hospital, rather than saying the truth. I almost cried watching this scene. A kid who is crying for her mother, and there is her big brother who didn't have the heart to tell her little sister the truth, thinking that she couldn't handle it. It all just breaks my heart. His sister is crying. So, he did some gymnastics to make her happy. It's not because he wants to do the gymnastics, but it's because it's the only thing that he could do at that time to make happy. I like the story writing here. If you watch this scene more seriously, you could notice that not only his sister is crying, but he is too. He is crying, but from the inside. He can't show his tears cause he is a big brother and had grown old. The writers had made their efforts to show that not only they are suffering, but also every people around. He is not doing those fun things only for his sister to feel better, but also making himself feel better too. After the funeral of their mother, Seita and Setsuko both went to live with their aunt at Nishinamiya. Due to the war, many people died day by day, so their funerals were made on the same day at the same place. That's the reason their mother also couldn't got a proper funeral. Very sad thing that could ever happen to anyone. You have suffered your whole life, and you can't at least get a proper funeral at your dad. As they both reached their aunt's house, they were welcomed warmly and nicely. Their aunt was living with her own family, and as it was the time of war, they too had a little bit of scarcity of food and resources. At the very first, they were treated well by his aunt's family, but in the end, although the family was nicer, but aunt herself became cruel to them. I'm not going to say what happened in the story because this video will be longer than usual, but just to give you an idea, I am going to say a little bit of the story. Aunt welcomed them warmly and treated both of the siblings very nicely. But as the time went on, she became irritated and annoyed by the fact that Seita and her sister were eating their food. I personally was simply annoyed by that kind of thinking. I know it is bad that someone else is eating the food that is meant for your family, but as a family relative, it is a responsibility of her to take care of the children. This is the face of a boy who feels frustrated but can't do anything as he and his sister are living in their shadows. Their aunt tried to sell kimonos of their mother for the exchange of grains. Setsuko, a little kid who does not know anything of the world, started to cry for kimonos as it belonged to her mother, but she still sold that kimono. And due to the harsh treatment, Setsuko and Seita decided to leave that house and live on their own. I really like the way the story is flowing. Incredible writing and direction makes this movie a masterpiece. By the way, you can also like and subscribe my channel. It may be a simple click to you, but it means a lot to me. So please like and subscribe. They both began to live in this area. I don't know what this area is called, but it is basically a cave live structure under the road. Yes, they were living there. And also one of the worst things when Seita and Setsuko were leaving was that their aunt was happy. She did not try to make them stay, but rather was happy. Seriously, I hate that woman. So as they were living outside in the wild without any restrictions, they could at least have a good times. They have some things from their old house, which they trade from food. This movie really shows that you can always be happy even in the bad times. But this happiness didn't stand for too long. They were out of things that they could trade on. Setsuko was also feeling very sick. Due to lack of food, Seita started to steal other stuff to fill their own stomach. Those attempts were successful lots of time, but one time when he was stealing some sugar canes, he was brutally beaten by the owner of the sugarcane field. That man sent that kid to the police to make him arrest, but thankfully the policeman was nice to let him go. The health of Setsuko was also becoming worse and worse. He also went to the doctor to check his sister's health, but doctor told him that no medication could treat his sister, rather she needs food and nutrition. His sister was suffering from malnutrition. Back then, Seita was in a very poor situation. He couldn't buy the food due to the lack of anything. Also, he doesn't even have a decent home for protection for his sister. It was really heartbreaking for him and also the entire audience. If anyone was there except for Seita, they would have fallen apart. Also, their father was a soldier and has 7,000 yen in his account, but due to war, they couldn't extract that money. Seita did lots of attempts before too, but couldn't. Health of Setsuko was being worse day by day, but one day when Seita finally extracted money from the bank, we found out Japan lost the war. Seita's father was soldier on the ship which was in the war, but it was found out that all the ship was destroyed with the battle with America. In fact, his mother and father both died during this movie. But this incident did not shake him, cause he still had his sister with him, so he went out to buy some food for his sister. After buying some groceries, he went home and surprised us with all the food and other stuff he got. His sister was in bad condition due to hunger and malnutrition. She couldn't even get up to eat the watermelon her brother got for her. Setsuko was not getting proper food for many days in the row. She had already become very weak and was on the verge of death. She was pushing herself to stay alive for many days, but when the help arrived, it was too late. She couldn't make it. There was a scene where Setsuko ate a little bit of watermelon, but she can't even swallow it. Then we are skipped to the next scene. We saw Seita and Setsuko both sleeping on the bed, and that night, little Setsuko died. The next day, Seita did her funeral. Some villagers were kind enough for giving necessary materials for her funeral. After that, Seita became alone, and also that 7,000 yen will also be gone after some times. And yes, that homeless person I showed you before, it was Seita. He was the main character of the movie and also the most tragic character in the movie. Gosh, this movie is best when it comes to story building. This movie is really a masterpiece, and I also recommend you to watch it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe my channel, and thanks for watching.